Hello and welcome everyone to the eSkill webinar, the importance of internal testing libraries for schools and cities. We are thrilled today to have our 2023 Talent Impact Leader, Hannah Feely from HK Organizational Solutions with us. And with that, we're going to get started. So make yourselves feel comfortable. Just as we have more people coming in, we're going to go ahead and get started. Your time is valuable and we love having you here with us today. So with that, Hannah. So let me tell you a little bit about this webinar. We're going to be talking about the impacts of professional assessments, the professional use of assessments, why eSkill made the difference for so many schools and cities, how to initiate change in your organization to best leverage professional assessments. And I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Hannah Feely from HK Organizational Solutions is an organizational psychologist with 7 years of psychometrics, assessments, and human resources experience within academia, private, and the public sector. She's a professional consultant in the education, city, county, and state hiring processes within California and throughout the United States. And she's located in beautiful San Diego, California. Hannah, we're excited to have you. You can get started.
Perfect. Thank you for that intro, Sheila. Before we discuss the impacts of professional assessments in the public sector, I want to paint for you a picture of what we see as public sector today. I see a lot of lack of modernization within the public sector. We're using older systems a lot within like our HRS systems, and that doesn't translate to a lot of the other systems that we use. We're using older practices of having people come into the office for some of our interviews, a lot of the testing processes that we see. And then those underutilized or outdated systems that we use put barriers to entry on working people. So, sometimes people are taking sick days and vacations just to come and interview with us. And that's putting a little bit of a barrier to entry into our organizations. We also see that we're using some of the same test content from about 10 years ago. It's just being reused, and we're not looking at if this test content is actually making a difference for your positions. If some people are kind of gaming the system by testing over and over again, it's really it's not putting the right testing skills out there so that you're not finding the right people. It's just more of the continuity of remembering what's on the test. And then we also see, a high volume of vacancies. We're seeing those entry-level positions that we just can't fill. We're seeing that people get into the position and they're really not liking it because they didn't really know what the position was about. From the testing and the job description, it's just not lining up. But where professional assessments really make a difference is they provide a modern response to current hiring problems. So, when we see the lack of modernity, we pair that with updated processes and software. We allow for more qualified applicants within the testing pool. When you open that up to having people test on their own schedule, they're able to do it at their own time. It's able to reach more people. People are able to interview from other states that might be really qualified, but haven't made the trip over to your state or your city yet. It puts public sector back in line with industry standards. So, public sector, is kind of, in our lack of modernity, we're struggling behind what we can offer to, candidates in the testing world. And, speeding that up with updated processes and software really helps. So if you find that, your testing content hasn't ever been looked at, you're using the same things over and over again, we have professional expertise and training that eSkill and HK organizations can provide, so that you have your own developed internal testing library that's relevant to your organization. They're defensible. They provide validity and on-the-job kind of a realistic job expectations for the person going into the position. So with your high volume of vacancies, you're going to find that having valid assessment content is going to kind of put a stopper in how people are showing up on the job and not thinking that this is the job that they applied for. They're going to see that the realistic job preview that we painted with a performance exam, or with the questions that we wrote that really highlighted what the person was going to be doing on the job, is what they're going to be doing. And they're aware of that, and they're good with it. They're not going to leave. So what makes working with a professional organizational psychologist so beneficial to your testing process? Professional use of assessments is important because it will highlight the local, state, and federal laws and guidelines that the organizational psychologist understands with your organization. So by using assessments that are developed for your organization, they're developed in the legal context in which you are using them. So within merit, city code, education code, your assessments are valid. They withhold that same standard, and then it's easy for you to take those pieces of the puzzle and apply them to your department so that they can roll them out seamlessly. Industrial organizational psychologists, they study the science behind the competencies. So, when you really want to be testing for attention to detail as your competency for a position, they're the ones that have looked at this over, research and time and said, oh, that is a good, competency for this position. And that's where you get some defensibility. They also abide by their own ethical, legal, and professional applications, so their own standards, which really allows them to be able to have that higher level of defensibility and rigor that a normal, assessment might not have. So by working with HK Organizational Solutions and eSkill together, you have the professional background, and then you also have the software to roll it out. So these different question types link back to what we can test for, like the Merit Systems Common Written Exam. These question types, multiple choice, free response, fill in the blanks, you can really load those with the competencies that you're looking to test for. And make that part of your written exam as the first step in your testing process. You can roll that all at the same time, with your performance exam and your oral exam, and really get it, really condensed in terms of your testing processes. For a performance exam, you can also include a content upload feature. So you can ask them to upload some of their content that they've already developed, or you can give them a prompt and then have them create something to also demonstrate their skills and experiences, and then have that be part of your written exam and have it all very cohesive. So you can also ask applicants for video responses. So instead of a structured interview where you might have raters asking the same question a billion different ways for each candidate, you can have the same question asked to all of your candidates at the same time, and then they upload their own video response to it, and then you can send that to your raters through eSkill. It's called team scoring. And all of the responses can be in the same place. You can do debrief with them through that, through Zoom, and then look at, your individual scores, and then kind of go from there and really formalize and keep all of your testing scores in one place and make it really seamless and easy. And that would be for the oral exam. So eSkill also comes with its own individual library, which I find beneficial to developing a base for my examinations, or just as a first test, and then you add on secondary competencies as like a second test if you want to really break down your candidate pool that way. So here's some of my favorites. We have some simulations that work really well within the testing experience. You can click on, a prompt, and, it'll pop up with a prompt, and then it'll have, like its own little room in which you, find and do the tasks. So that's really good to measure that, that other platforms don't have. You know, matching skills, attention to detail, those are all like really good, just base things that I would like to add, you know, for each of my assessments that I do, you know, depending if that's something that they need. With eSkill, you can also develop, and really importantly, your internal library. So you can develop questions that are specific to your organization, your job family, your position, and your work site. So you can make your questions really be a realistic job preview of what you're going to be asking people to do in their own position. You can get at those specific competencies that your hiring managers really want you to test for, that make sense and that are valid in terms of what you want to be testing for in your testing processes. But not only that, you can also import existing examinations as long as you have them approved for upload by the content developer if they're not your own assessments that you wrote. At this point in time, you might be thinking that you do need to look at your examinations. You need to really get them validated and reassessed, but you're thinking of some barriers to change that really affect all of our organizations. Those things like the lack of perceived necessity across decision makers, you know, your time and your budget, which are always a big important factor in public sector. And then buy-in from the people that really make the decisions. But luckily, I've provided some factors here for successful change. So you can leverage timing to really be able to get in at a good time to where you can, you know, develop your assessments further and make that part of your goals as a department. You know, when you're doing your annual review and you want to, you know, discuss what your goals are for your department, you can really build that into what you're currently working on. You can establish buy-in at the management level. So, you know, getting like a board member who really understands what you're up against as a department leader is really helpful because they can become your change agents. They can really promote that for you. And then if you provide them some return on investment statistics, you know, how this will affect your department, other departments, you know, how it will affect the organization in general, then you can really help create that change for your organization, get the funding, you know, get what you need to get to be able to really make your internal library and your testing processes really what they should be. But you'll also need to establish buy-in at your own department level, so at the human resources level. And there you need to establish individual benefit. You need to make sure that your employees are knowing that this isn't going to cause them more stress. It's not going to cause them more time, maybe like a little bit of a time investment, but you know, if you have a plan to where it's really work through who's going to be doing what and how this is going to affect your organization, what software you're using, you know, and have a good time frame. That's how you can really roll that out and make sure that they're comfortable and confident with being able to accept this change. And working with a professional consultant is really beneficial for that happening. So as we discussed some key takeaways, like, you know, the public sector definitely deserves professionally developed assessments. It's really important for the public sector to be on par with industry standards, to not be discriminatory in any sense of how they're hiring, how we kind of look at the way that our organization should grow in the future and be able to retain and, you know, reach the populations that we're looking to hire. That's why professionally developed assessments are important. But eSkill and HK Organizational Solutions work together to provide professional assessments. It's all in one, so you know, we don't have to, we can go within our own software, you know, eSkill that you're currently using, or if you need to get onboarded to eSkill, we can work together to really make those processes work for you, and then have that timeline of how that should look, how that should work, how your team should adapt to it, you know, getting your internal library all together and making sure that your processes are really defensible, that they're hiring, that they're testing for the right things that you want to hire for. And then, so being a change instigator for your organization is really important to being able to make that work. to be able to really make sure that you're advocating for your department and your organization and how it can benefit your organization in the long run. So that about wraps it up. I hope that you guys have kind of come away with the, the belief that professional assessments really benefit the public sector and your own organizations, and you kind of know how you can see that working for your own organization going forward. With that, we have probably about like 5 minutes or so for questions, so I will take us right into questions now.
Great, thanks, Hannah. For those of you on the webinar, thanks for your attention. You can post more questions in the questions section on the right hand of the webinar console. We've got a couple, Hannah, that have come in already. One question: it's been easier for my department to use the same skills tests and exams for years. We don't run some of the recruitments that often, so we don't think it's giving anyone an unfair advantage in hiring. Why would we develop new examinations?
So, I mean, I can totally see where you're coming from. If the same things are working, you know, they say don't fix the wheel if it's not broken, that kind of thing. But the thing is, what you might be finding is that your internal candidates that you have may kind of be gaming the system in some way. So they might be seeing the same examinations over again. They might be getting practice that, you know, they are testing over and over again, and they're kind of building their own expertise, and that's not allowing you to really test if they have the knowledge or if they're just kind of remembering things. So not only that, but you know, in assessments in general, if you're testing with the same assessments time over time again, it's really easy for that content to kind of like leak, for that to become something that, you know, people can gain an unfair advantage of just because the content is known in the world. So that's why I really, you know, I think that validating at a yearly basis is really important to do, to establish good testing protocols.
Great, thank you, Hannah. What if we don't have the opportunity to control our own content?
Oh, interesting. I would look into that. I want to know, from my perspective, why that is. So are you kind of like locked into, you know, like a content development with like another program? You know, how can you get out of that? If you don't have it, if you don't mean that you have like the means for it, like, you know, you don't have anybody within your department that can develop test content, if that's what you, how do you work with a professional to be able to create those assessments? I think that that's the route that you would take. If it's something written into your own kind of like rules and regulations, I would look into that, because if that means that you're pigeonholed into an assessment provider specifically, I would look at the terms of that to see if you're not happy with your testing provider currently, you know, when you can break that agreement, and then kind of go into like a new system to where you can use professionally developed assessments, or, you know, a different company in which you need to. I hope that helps.
Sure, thank you. And here's another one. My organization is currently using eSkill for one multiple choice exam for entry-level positions, but hasn't transitioned over to any other recruitments. How can we utilize eSkill more in our hiring process?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that you can utilize eSkill within your hiring process besides just multiple choice questions. You can, you know, as we went through that previous slide before of how you can use different parts of eSkill's testing process to create, you know, a written assessment, you know, content upload for a performance assessment, you can do that. You can also convert your existing structured interviews to video responses so that you can have them all uploaded as once. And my favorite thing to do with that is to test for everything all at once. So if people, if you roll that out to everybody that you've had apply to the recruitment, and you have this long testing system and they can take it within, 3 to 5 days. But you have all of the exams sent at once. They just do it once, and then they have everything back to you, and you can get that graded, and then you'll know who your testing, your further testing pool is. That's one of my favorite things to do with eSkill. It's made it really easy for organizations that I've consulted with and worked at.
Thank you, Hannah. I have a boss who doesn't believe in assessments in hiring. What should I say to them?
Oh, that's sad, because that's, my whole thing that I love. So, I mean, I would say, if they're not into using assessments for hiring, why is that? Like, do you as the employee see that there's so many candidates that you're having and you're having to physically interview 100 plus candidates? How can you really narrow that down for yourself so that you don't have as much work to do on your own? You're not, it's not like a full headache every time that you run a recruitment. I would talk with your boss about how this is impacting you, how it's impacting your team time-wise, how you can really use assessments to narrow down and better assess people that are coming into your door, so that you don't have to be interviewing 100 people at a time and navigating all of that. That sounds like a headache, so I do feel bad for you, but I hope that helps.
Absolutely, and I would also look into what the turnover rate is with hiring without assessments, that it's very likely that they may not be as good a fit because you don't have enough information about them.
True.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. That looks like all of our questions. Hannah, we are so grateful to you for spearheading this webinar for us. Any questions that you may have, feel free to go to eSkill.com or hkorganizationalsolutions.com. We're here for you. We want to help you advance your hiring, your development, and even your skills gap analysis for any of your candidates or employees to help you be more successful, help make your job easier, and help you move more quickly. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.